The April 5th, 2022 ARPA meeting will now come to order. For the secretary, please state your name. Ken Carney.
David Grudberg.
Dwight Knowles.
Gary Perdo.
Michael Last.
Rohan Smith.
Each member has received a copy of tonight's agenda. Any proposed changes on the agenda? The agenda stands. The special meeting minutes from March 1st, that's the meeting that we didn't have, right?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so we sent that agenda to City Hall the Wednesday before the meeting. They misplaced it, never posted it, so we got a call hours before the meeting saying you couldn't have it. So we simply informed the city clerk that there was not a meeting because the agenda wasn't posted. All right? All right, let's move on to Chairman's report. I'd like to spend a quick moment and just talk about this recent audit on the CRF funds, if you will. So, you know, I read that, it's roughly 28 pages, and in that audit, they describe my company being paid for a bathroom job that never happened, okay? And that is untrue. The bathroom has been greatly delayed for several reasons, but the bottom line is that the city asked me to remodel a shower. I don't typically do city work. If you go back in time, you don't see me on city jobs. I'm a residential guy. In the process of doing that, we were asked to leave City Hall because of COVID. When we tried to come back in, the vault that houses the shutoffs for the shower was locked up because of a disputed mayoral election. The absentee ballots were in there. Then OSHA came, did an inspection, and demanded that this shower has to have an eye wash station, a handicap vanity, a slop sink, none of which was included in my scope. And then we ran into, they wanted me to build a wall, they wanted me to gut a ceiling. I said we have to get asbestos testing. On February 23rd, the city sent me a check for $7,850, which would have been the total of the job, but is no longer the total of the job because of all the changes. I didn't ask for the check, and I immediately wrote a letter. Can I sit down for this? So in my office, checks come in, and I don't know about it to the next day. The bookkeepers that work for me do a report, and when I go home at night, there's an email waiting for me, and I find out about it. I did not bill the city, but I wrote this letter, and in this letter, I advised the city that they paid me for this shower, and I attached all of the materials, which roughly equal $4,500, and I complain about the difficulty of getting in, and I attached the permits that I pulled, both building and plumbing, prior to me getting that check. Okay? That's right, you're right there, bud. And I said, guys, you know, I need to get back in. Could not get back into City Hall. Finally, in February of this year, I called a meeting with Doug Coulter, the grants writer, Tom McCarthy, my project manager, and with that, we came up with a game plan, and I had to order a bunch of extra material. And then the audit happens, and the auditor, I don't think he went to the right bathroom, because the one that he supposedly audited, you can see the brand-new shower base that was installed, all nice epoxy, all the plumbing work that was roughed in, materials were on site. He gave an impression in his report that I had taken this money and did no work, okay? So I am disputing that, and this is the letter I sent. I created a much larger letter disputing it. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, but you guys know me. I've been volunteering for the city for 18 years. I have never asked for a dime of reimbursement. It is not cheap to make these booklets for 2 committees every month. I gotta pay people in my office to do it. I gotta do color copies. It is not cheap to drive all over the city to inspect work that's being done. Never asked for a dime of reimbursement in 18 years, okay? So they're painting me in a very bad light, and I'm fighting that. Any questions? Yes, sir.
No, I just wanted to say, I appreciate you bringing that up, because, it is important, with the recent history in the city of West Haven, that we are transparent, and that was transparency, and transparency is gonna be paramount, moving forward. And the way you set up this committee, it was to be open and transparent. And I hope that we continue doing that. I do know, when you read the audit and you hear that kind of stuff, there was a lot of stuff in there that was a little bit questionable, but certainly, they made this committee out to be, maybe, we may not have all the respect and accountability that we should have because of that report. And I just think, thank you for saying that, and we'll continue moving forward and being transparent.
Mike, I since this happened, I start questioning a lot of things. Number one, how do we build a $130 million high school that has been consistently under budget month after month? We add back $7 million in service, in product, hard costs, which includes 8 new classrooms that weren't part of the original design, an expanded cafeteria by 2,500 square feet. We upgrade things, we do an outdoor patio, we upgrade things all over the place. And you never heard from Marb. Marb has never said, how are you guys doing that? How are you guys being successful with this project? Can we see the high school? Can we see your budget? Can we come to one of your meetings? Nothing. We put up modular classrooms at Bailey, blew them up in 3 months, okay? Air-conditioned modular classrooms to take care of an overcrowding problem. Never hear from Marb. We got sports courts going up all over the city at various school sites. Never hear from Marb. So to me, they have no idea what's going on because they're not looking. And that audit is an example of doing something with closed eyes, trying to create problems that may not exist. I know there are problems, but when do they come here and say, what are you guys really doing and where are the successes? I got 4 solar jobs on 4 schools that have saved the Board of Ed $112,000 a year, and we got solar. We negotiated. I went to Lee Corporation Counsel. I asked for an attorney. I worked with Steve Stewart at Birch and Moses. I went back and forth for 6 months negotiating, learned all about solar, had the guidance of the attorney and the solar people and all this other stuff, and we got them in. I had to go down and open the schools on Saturdays for these guys. I had to make sure that the electricians they were using were licensed and had the proper insurances. I got their W-2, their, not the I-9, what is it, the W-9. I did all the legwork for all that stuff. You never hear from Mark, So I'm not buying it.
Well, that was just my comment was, that, listen, the city has problems. A lot of the stuff in that report was legitimate, but some of the stuff was not, and them attacking you was certainly one of those. And this committee, as long as we continue to be accountable to the community, we'll be fine.
I believe that. And I spoke to the mayor. I said every dime in ARPA should be signed off by this committee, so there's one point where all the money is accounted for. All invoices need to be done, approved and reviewed in public in this forum. And that's just how we did the high school, and it worked fine. So, any other comments before I move on? Anybody? Okay, next I'd like to introduce David T. Grudberg. He is our attorney who will be coming to the meetings. Hello, David.
Hello, greetings to everybody. I'll take the mysterious mask off. Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you. So I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you that the sign of a good attorney is one that you can get in touch with all the time. This gentleman has never not answered the phone when I called. He's a wealth of knowledge. He asks all the right questions. I'm excited to have him here. I'm going to treat him as though he's part of the committee. And if at any time you feel you need to insert something or ask questions, feel free to do it. We look forward to your guidance.
I'll give a little intro. I practice in New Haven. My firm, Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, we have offices around the state. We're in New Haven. We're in Waterbury. We're in Stamford. I've got. I know basically my card is on one of these pages that Ken put together. But for those who like old-fashioned cards, feel free to grab one. I've been practicing law for longer than I care to remember. And in terms of my role, I've been engaged by the city for a couple of different facets of what's going on relating to, I guess, COVID relief monies and related monies. The audit, which everybody's obviously familiar with, which has just come out. I've just gotten involved in this. I'm still frankly getting up to speed, but I'm going to be helping out, looking backward with that about, whatever issues are there. And then my role, as has been put to me for this committee, is to be a resource for the committee to make sure that things are done the right way. And I'm going to be, toward that end, I will be familiarizing myself with the rules that are supposed to be followed. I've heard the talk of transparency, and that was emphasized to me from the first moment this engagement was discussed with me. And going forward, if the committee is committed to transparency, I will try my best to provide the best guidance I can to make sure things are done the right way in accordance with all of the guidelines that apply. And I will hope to be a helpful resource for the committee however I can be. So
Thank
that's
you,
it in
sir.
a nutshell.
Any questions for David?
Just one real quick.
Yes, sir.
I want to get this. But, my biggest concern is with the list of projects. The mayor has submitted it to the city council.
Mhm.
They will be looking it over and approved. Before we start, Mr. Chairman, this will go through you. I'd like David to look at those projects and make sure that they fit the letter of the law of the ARPA legislation.
They're in the book here.
Yeah, no, I looked at the copy of the book that got emailed around and had the exact same thought.
And
There's a lot of numbers on that page, and I've just gotten the rules as it were, and yeah, before, I know I'm not coming in on step one. A lot of work clearly has been done. There's projects that have been identified, but I agree completely that before we start down the road on a $1 million line item or something like that, we gotta feel comfortable and make sure everybody who is involved feels comfortable that this is appropriate, this is within the guidelines, and this is gonna be something that anybody looking back down the road would say, you know what, this is exactly what the money was intended for, so
Yeah,
I agree.
this community, as you probably know, they're a little nutty. Politically, online, a lot of things get said that might or might not be true, but are put out there. And we just want to make sure that people understand, yes, that the projects that we're going to undertake, yes, they were approved properly through the legislative channels, and yes, they are legal. The money that is a use for that kind of money. And then I would certainly feel comfortable.
Sure. I mean, I unfortunately can't control what the general public thinks, but I can do my level best to give the committee my, best advice. And if something is a close call or a gray area, I'll put it that way. I'm not gonna, I'm not here to serve any agendas other than to do my best to make sure the rules are applied and complied with.
There'll be a lot of eyes on us.
Understood. Understood.
Okay, thank you for that. So if you go to the city council presentation, I had gone to the city council on March 28th and delivered this packet. I've included it for you guys. First, we have the attorney we're working with, who you just heard from, David, and his information's right here. If you turn the page, this is the on-call architectural services. This is out to bid now. And let me just kind of go through this with you. So if you go to page, I guess 29, I'm sorry. It's tough to see. This page here. Complete the graph, okay? So what happens is the state puts out a bid for engineers and architects, okay? And those are always available to us to use. The problem is if you don't put out to bid the architectural services ourselves, number one, you don't get architects who may want to help the community. specifically West Haven. They wouldn't bid the state list, they would rather work with us, okay? And sometimes you get architects who say, you know, this is a good thing, I'm gonna reduce my fee, I'm gonna work with this, I'm not gonna bill all my hours, and that has happened, okay? You wouldn't get that off a state bid list. I also thought that it was important to identify, you know, 3 or 4 architects of various sizes. So you're not using the guy or the firm with 100 architects to maybe design our windows at City Hall. You're using the 2-man architect for that, okay? Maybe now you're building a recycling center, you want the guy with 100 guys. So I felt that we wanted a scale of architects from small to large, and we can do that through this bid. So when these bids come in, they're RFQs, I will pass them out to the committee, and you guys will decide which 4 firms we're gonna entertain for pricing. We get the pricing, and if they're good and we agree, that becomes a list of architects to choose from. So that's the on-call architectural services I'm talking about. Any questions on that? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Just make a suggestion.
Sure.
Whether it be an RFQ or an RFP, that we include a disclosure clause in all of the proposals, should any of the principals, employees, relatives of same have relatives that work within the city or related to elected officials in the city. I think that when we look at, a lot of questionable practices, we see a lot of, one particular vendor who was a councilman and whose invoices are in question. And I think whenever we're choosing a vendor, just a relation or a relationship is gonna give an appearance of impropriety that I know personally I'd like to avoid, and I think the committee would like to avoid as well.
So I failed to make copies of the purchasing ordinance tonight. And I will do that for the next meeting. And the way it works is anything we put out to bid goes up to finance, and they have all those disclosure forms that go out with the bid package. And you have to identify your relationships, you have other jobs you might be doing for the city. If you're a local guy, did you pay your taxes? They cover that pretty well. That goes out with the whole packet. And I'll show you that at some point when I get it, but that's a good point. Next I have, this is the list of state approved vendors. We may want to go to this for specific engineering services that don't require an architect.
What page are on, Ken?
Yeah, when they copied this, I can't read this. Yeah, if you go to this one here,
I don't have page 28.
this one here. Go to this one. It's the only graph in there. You see it? Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
I think I'm missing some pages.
Really?
I printed a sheet in my office.
There's only 23 pages total.
Here's.
So this list are firms that went through a state bidding process, and supposedly we can pull off of this list and meet the bidding requirements. Okay? Turn the page. Next, we have request for qualifications for licensed accounting firm. So I actually spent the better part of a weekend developing this RFQ, and I spoke with the mayor, and the thought was, instead of hiring a budget manager who would be one person who would act as a consultant, we hire an entire firm that specializes in this exact situation. And in the research that I did, what these firms do is, in addition to the attorney checking what's reimbursable and allowed, they already do that, okay? They provide an electronic notebook for every single project. They make that available to the public. They keep track of all the funds. They make recommendations. They avoid us leaving money on the table. And the deliverables, which are on, well, the concept that I came up with is strategy, monitoring, and transparency, okay? So everything is based on those 3 principles. But if you go down to the deliverables, which in this case says page 4 because it's part of a different package, this is what we're asking these firms to deliver, and that would include documented advice regarding all applicable legislation, regulations, policies, and rules related to federal recovery funds. So sometimes the landscape changes with legislation. We would not necessarily know that. These guys are right on top of that, so they keep us informed of that, okay? Documentation and interpretation of guidance from ARPA funding entities. Recommendation to maximize ARPA funding in conjunction with other local entities. Description of scope and eligibility of each funding source before stakeholder engagement. Suggestions for appropriate policy and procedures for allowed use of ARPA funds. Documents explaining the process to meet federal compliance requirements. Project inventory containing all required ARPA data elements. Master electronic workbook that consolidates all individual projects. Regular progress report on each program's agreed upon deliverables. Risk assessment process documentation and training. Presentation and communication materials for community stakeholders and the public. You know, if a third party says something, it might be more believable than if we say something, you know, and that's an example of that. Presentations and communication materials for community stakeholders, public, I said that. Documentation to demonstrate compliance with the ARPA guidance. Final closeout report to the city and to the Treasury Department. Reports on allowed uses of ARPA funds and eligibility for specific expenses. All required U.S. Treasury reporting. Other reports based on committee's needs. So my plan is to, with your approval, find this firm. We'll interview several firms. My understanding is pricing is normally hourly, and we have a budget to pay these guys. And that person would sit at this table, like David's sitting at this table, and we will hit this thing home and make it work. So,
Did we get any responses?
it just went out in the paper. It just went out this week. So this,
The time, it said it went out on the 28th, and deadline for the due is today.
I don't think so. What happens is, when I do these, I send them up to City Hall, and it takes 2 or 3 days to engage them, and then I send it in a Word document, and they change it, so I don't think we have them back yet. So, yeah, when I develop these, I like to put the dates on to express the urgency and identify the RFI period. I don't think it's going out, I don't think it's
He
done.
published it on the website, it says he published it on the 31st, but that responses were due back on the 5th.
Maybe then, I'll find out,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, they'll get me the list of responses, so.
Do you need a motion to accept this?
No. What we'll do is we'll, when they come in, we'll go through them, and as a committee, we'll approve the ones that you want to move forward with. But I think that's a much better deal than finding a budget manager somewhere. You know, a budget manager comes into work, calls in sick for 2 days, or gets the flu, what do you do? Here, you have a whole firm, you know, so I feel good about that. Any questions on that?
Have we discussed the anticipated budget for this?
So the council has allowed 700,000 for paying an accounting firm, paying a attorney, and paying an architect, engineer. We have 700,000 in soft costs right now. Okay. Next, I have the mayor's plan to the city council. So the concern I have with this plan is I think we're underfunded in several categories. And what's gonna happen is this stuff's gonna go out to bid, and you're gonna find out you don't have enough money to do the job. And I think at that point, if I'm correct, the council would have to make a change. Now, to give you an example of what's happening, the high school project, we built for $475 per square foot, okay? We just put out the lecture hall. Now, I understand it's a smaller project in a competitive bid process, and we have 17 different categories, and we got between 3 and 5 bids for each category. So it was very competitively bid. It wasn't like one guy bid it, okay? And that's a CM process that takes the lowest bidder from each category and then builds the lecture hall. We came in at $1,000 a square foot. And we are presently value engineering that number to get that number down. So we have blown the budget out of the water in that, okay? And I think the same thing is gonna happen, and I know this from my own business. You know, we're seeing products just escalate out of control. We have seen 6 increases on flooring material in the last 12 months. I've never seen that. Anderson Windows, 3 or 4 increases in the last 12 months. Specialty products are tough to get. There's an inflation aspect to it. There's a shortage of material aspect to it, and then there's guys that are gouging. And it's happening all over the place. So as we go through this process, we may find that we're short money. And we'll just start from the top here. So Housing Crisis Fund, $1 million. So the concept here was that a city-owned property, maybe recently acquired in foreclosure, be converted to a homeless shelter for families only. Okay, and for very limited time. Now, we had Bonita Grubbs come in from New Haven. She made a wonderful presentation, and her model seems to be the best model. I think the mayor liked that model, where, you know, a husband and wife with 2 or 3 kids come to the homeless shelter. They're there for 2 or 3 weeks. They have an advocate who helps them find a house somewhere. Right now, if there's a fire in town in a 3-family, do you know where the people go? They go to a hotel. That's where they go, okay? Now they could go to a 2 or 3 bedroom home until the insurance is cleared and they have a place to go to for real. There's nothing like that in West Haven right now. So this $1 million was geared towards that. And I think that is enough money to do that job.
How many units are they, I understand conceptually what it is that they want to achieve, but any idea on the number of units that they're trying to?
I think you're looking at about 6 units. Yeah. Between 1 and 3 bedroom.
So you think it would be like 3 2-family houses would be something you're looking for, or on one site?
You know, that was my initial thought, and I want to be careful what I say, but there happens to be a building in West Haven that was an old Italian club, okay, that's been defunct for many, many years, that I think the city is foreclosing on. And that would be an ideal space. It's got ample parking, it's got a couple floors, you know, things like that. I don't know if that's gonna go, I'm just saying that could be a game changer, something like that. Okay. Next, we got the Food Bank Support Fund, and obviously, that speaks for itself. Direct cash to small business, you know, I don't know what the council's gonna do with that, but that speaks for itself. Turn the page. Pocket parks all over the place. You know, $1 million sounds like a lot of money. A lot of our parks are in poor shape. I've already gotten calls from city officials asking when they can access this money. I'm like, listen, you're not touching a dime of it until the council approves it, and then it's going out to bid. You're gonna follow the purchasing ordinance. I will have a copy of the purchasing ordinance here for you next month, and we'll make sure that everything goes out to bid properly. Allentown Library Branch, this is kind of a weird one, because the way I read this, and this is the mayor's version, and this may change with the council, but they're offering the library $1 million if and only if they go in conjunction with Kerrigan School and a firehouse. And the firemen will tell you, you can't put a firehouse behind Kerrigan because it's in a residential neighborhood. Firehouse has to be in a main street for obvious reasons. So I don't know how this money is gonna be made available. Then you've got public health outreach, and there's some money here for the renovation of the public health space. So what you may not know is that I guess 8-9 years ago, I ran the project for this 16,000 square feet, the old police station. You're sitting in this room, which I actually designed with the architect. But the rest of City Hall is in pretty tough shape. When you look up, you see old ceiling tiles that are yellowed, you see old lights, and above that is spray-on fireproofing. And we were able to go into a couple units on the 3rd floor at night with an asbestos team and quickly pull everything out, and then keep it closed during the day, and then bring in the ceiling guy the next day. And we were, for like 60, 70,000, we were able to, give them a new ceiling, clean up the asbestos, a new floor, and paint the unit. And that's kind of what you're looking at here. I don't know that $250 is gonna be enough to build an exam room. We have an exam room over at the high school, manned by nurses, and I think there's some doctors in there. It's funded by the state, and just the FF&E alone was a lot of money. So I don't think $250 is gonna do it, but we'll see.
Hate to keep asking.
Yeah.
It's not our providence, I But are they looking at the go-forward costs after this?
We don't ask those questions, buddy. I know.
You know, it's
Well,
all
this-
all well and good to launch something like this for the health screening,
Yeah.
you know, with, $330,000, but, okay, so after the first 6 months of operation, it says about hiring RNs. I can tell you right now, RNs are costing $50 an hour.
Yeah.
And they're just building the new Cornell Scott Hill Health Center in West Haven.
Yep.
I mean, they
I
think
know.
about trying to partner with them and leveraging those funds, or,
Well, you're 100% right, Chris, and our scope is narrow.
Yeah, I
We have
get
to,
it.
we have to deliver what they give us, and, we're delivering pies to people. Not every pie has been baked properly, so that's all I can tell you. Turn the page. Arts Center, $3.5 million. That's in addition to a $1.5 million a grant from the state, and that's the building over here. Not my favorite project, but if it's gonna go, we're gonna be involved and make sure it goes right. So that's where we are there. Municipal building improvements, I think this is underfunded. They're talking about, the Johnson Senior Center, bringing them to the first floor. They're talking about a roof replacement. That's a partial roof replacement. You might make that number, but the 640 I think is low. The City Hall replacement window project, it's based on the PCBs. If we're able to not test and assume PCBs and throw everything away in a contaminated, containment, under-contaminated containment, if you will, I think we could do it for 650. I've got a lot of data on the windows for City Hall. I've been trying to do those for years, so I'm excited about that project. Right now, these windows don't open all the time. All of them don't open, and some just come slamming down on you. And I came out here with an infrared camera. I shot the outside of the building at night, and you could see the heat just bellowing out of the building. I wasn't able to do the windows when I did this project because that was state funded. And once you put the state requirements on the windows, it was so costly that the city's portion or share was greater with state funding than without state funding. So we left the windows alone.
is the senior center, is that the one on Noble Street?
Yes, sir.
The woman spoke passionately about?
Yes, yep,
Thank God I didn't want to upset her.
yep. Now, this Public Works infrastructure paving improvements, this is actually a payback budget. They've already done the paving, and they did it because the cost of doing it last year versus this year was, I think, 30%. So that's gonna be a fill the hole with that money. Next, we have aid to fire districts. They're each getting $1 million if this plan survives the council. I met with the West Shore Fire Department, and I got a high-level quote and design for them for modular sleeping quarters. So the problem is they have women coming into the firehouses. They don't have proper sleeping arrangements. They don't have enough bathrooms. So a modular unit, which is a 20, 25-year product, is a fraction of the cost of putting an addition on the building. And ironically, when you put an addition on a firehouse, guess what you have to do? You gotta put sprinklers in, which blows your budget, okay? So by doing a standalone building, outside of that building, we can get, air conditioning, heat, nice bathrooms, plumbing, and you can create a room, 8 rooms, if you will, that are all connected to the same communications, the same fire alarm, the same everything, so when the bell goes off, they hear it as well. And they're very excited about that. So we're gonna help the firehouses, spend that money. If you notice, the $1 million is described as, kind of vague, how they do it, and we're gonna have to help them do that. All right? Next, you got stormwater management. That's gonna require an engineer. We're gonna have to go out and find out where are the real issues around here for flooding. And I don't mean the puddle that develops on the street after rain. I mean the wave that comes down and wipes out a basement apartment. We gotta find those places. And we gotta hire an engineer, and we gotta fix this, this water problem that we have in the city. And we have, it looks like, a few $1 million to do that. They're talking about buying a truck to do their own sewer maintenance. If you looked at the cost of hiring a third party to snake a sewer line, you could buy that truck many times over. And the city is saying that by buying the truck, they could split the truck with the sewer commission, who is responsible for getting the grease out of the pipes. Instead of calling a third party, they'd use the truck. The sewer commission might house the truck because they have the facility to do it, and then the city and the sewer commission could use that. Okay? Turn the page. Next, we got recycling center. This one concerns me. I don't think $1 million is gonna do it. If you go to Google and you Google some of these sites, they're popping up all over Connecticut. And what they are basically is these large mafia blocks that sort of define the area. Then you've got a dumpster situated that a car or truck could pull up and throw it in the dumpster without lifting it from grade. So there's some grading that's gotta be done so you pull up and you just kinda throw it over the cliff into the dumpster. There's also gotta be a closed-in area for all this bottle, recycling and things. I don't know that $1 million is gonna do it, so that's something we gotta keep an eye on. Child pedestrian safety, this is adding sidewalks, and I do have some funds available from the ESSER funds on the Board of Ed side that could complement this. As you guys know, we just spent a lot of money on Board of Ed projects with those ESSER funds. We came out of the gate fast, and we got additions going up. We've got the modular classrooms, we got sports courts going everywhere. They've done a very nice job over there, and we can maybe, team up with those guys. Broadband access, speaks for itself. Traffic boardwalk camera monitoring, that speaks for itself. Turn the page. This is, first responder family relief. Now, something like this, it's gotta go through the committee. We're not gonna make any decisions on that. We're gonna stamp it, put it in the checkbook, and make sure it's done right. People at City Hall administer it, but what I don't want to happen is I don't wanna wake up one day and say, oh, we spent $2 million of ARPA money and it didn't come before the committee. I told them everything has to come through the committee, and there are things that we're not going to talk about much. We're just gonna say, okay, let's put it in the checkbook, you've approved that, and this page reflects those sort of things.
Ken, do you think we have the staff to do that?
We're gonna have those accountants on staff.
I mean, okay, but
Yeah.
I mean, is somebody, a staff in City Hall gonna administer that
Yeah,
project,
what's
or-
gonna happen
or-
is Doug's gonna be here with us. He's gonna start joining the meeting. That's your grants writer. He's got a assistant. I think it'll go fine.
Okay.
Yep. Next, you've got this Painter Park Sports Fieldhouse, way underfunded. 5,500 square feet for $1 million. Your soft cost in this thing will be $250,000. So that's gonna be dumbed down to something realistic, or that, who knows what happens with that, but you're not gonna do it for $1 million, impossible. They got sports camps in here. There'll be a process for selecting who gets that. Next, we've got FEMA rejection backup contingency, CARES Act oversight. So here's our $700,000, guys. If you look at the page 21, that's the $700,000 that we're working out of. I know David's only gonna bill us every other hour, so the money will go a long way, so we'll be good there.
Or half price?
So that's kind of what we're looking at. So I think we have some challenges, because I think they've underestimated some of these numbers, and I think the process is we go back to the council, and we report to them and say, listen, here's the numbers we got, what do you guys wanna do? And I think as a result, some of these line items might go away, and say, okay, we're short over here. The council is gonna decide to do this project with the funding from two projects versus not doing either project, But
So, I mean, the plan would be is to do all the work, get RFPs, quotes, everything for everything,
yes.
then go back to the council as opposed to maybe having them prioritize?
Well, no, I think.
Because I think they're way short.
Yeah, well, I think some of the things, like the windows at City Hall, we put out to bid and we get going right away. I think that there are some projects that we can make happen immediately, but projects that come in short, we're gonna have to go back to the council and ask what they wanna do. But we wanna give them the data. Go ahead.
I agree. I think when they're approving this project, because early on, we're gonna probably have to do estimates on some of this project, and I would assume this is most of it's gonna be prevailing wage. And it's gonna get expensive. I
Yep.
know, materials are up probably 35%. Should we make a request to the city council when they approve this to prioritize it? should we not have enough, we'll try to do everything, but what happens if we fall short?
Hey, you had a great point, Ken, is that the windows are a pretty simple bid. That's really that's an easy one to do. You could get that project kicked off and started
Yeah.
quickly. All that work to put into all of these things to really get, really solid bids on it, where you'd be able to quantify this whole package. I would think it'd be easier for them to prioritize right off the bat, and you could start actually getting work done as you're working down
Yeah.
the line, and save some efforts at
You
the
know,
bottom if it's not a priority to them.
I mean, you guys bring some good points. I mean, the reality of it is, they create the plan. No one said they had to prioritize the plan.
No, but I guess there's a $3.5 million contingency, if you will.
Yes, there is, yep.
So there is an opportunity
Yep.
to go back later and say, all right, well, these are the projects that we're already doing, these are the projects left, we don't have enough money, you have to prioritize them.
I mean, we're gonna have help from an architect, we're gonna have, help from an accounting firm that sees these projects going on in other towns, and we'll have real budget numbers because of that. And I think at that point, we decide to go back to the city council, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, because if they're approving these projects, I think we probably should go back. If we don't think we're gonna have enough money to get them all done, I think we
Yeah.
should go back and say, can you prioritize them, so we make sure that we get your priority projects done first.
Yeah. I think we table that until we get, some more input and hire the rest of the professionals, and then we'll sit down and go over it. So, in my opinion. All right, any questions on the mayor's plan? To the council, anybody? Okay. Moving on to new business, is there any new business from anyone on the committee? All right, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Guys, thanks for being here tonight. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much.